All right. Get started this morning. There we go. All right. Okay, as usual, if you have announcements, prayer requests, jot those down on a card. And I didn't look. I don't know who's got announcements. So let's see. That doesn't say. We'll find out. But anyway, get that to whoever has announcements this morning. And let's begin with a word of prayer this morning. Kelly, would you mind leading us in prayer? I should have asked earlier. All right, so the title of the chapter we're in this morning of our book is I Just Can't Wait to Be King, Resisting the Urge to Run Ahead of God. So in general, we know that David was anointed at what age? Anybody? 15. Yeah, about 15 years old. And then, when did he actually take the throne? Come on, have y'all not been reading? Say again.
When it was safe.
At God's appointed time? Yeah. He's somewhere around 30 when he actually took the throne, I believe, if I remember correctly. So the point being, he knew for a long time that he was to be king. And how many examples did we see where he resisted to take over the throne? Several times, okay.
He could have killed Saul.
There's at least twice that he could have killed Saul. That he clearly said, and the men that were with him urged him to do it. Here it is. He's delivered into your hands. That's right. And Saul had that, or David had the wisdom of, and he asked for guidance in those situations as well, right? That was the other thing is David prayed, and one of the situations it turned his stomach, and he knew that he was not to kill Saul at that time, and he cut off a piece of his robe there in the cave. So that's the general topic this morning is resisting the urge to run ahead of God. Any opening comments on just that thought there in general? Not even specific just to David, but to life today. I know somebody's got something.
We live in an instant gratification society.
Yes. Okay.
Even like when I was a kid, birthdays were huge because you had waited to get a gift. Or Christmas, or any, occasion. Where now, I'm trying to make lists at my house sometimes is terrible because we don't wait.
You're gonna get her fired up. I'm gonna be in trouble by the time we get out of here.
Well, for our own.
Yeah.
Or if it's something that we need to be praying about, or something like that, and let God help us. It's an instant gratification, we want it now.
It is. Society has moved that way, holistically probably, to where we can get exactly what we want whenever we want it. Yeah. Especially when it comes to purchasing things. Yeah, you don't have to settle for whatever the local store has in stock, or wait until you can get to a bigger town or a bigger store. You just pull your phone out and it's here in 2 days. Exactly what you wanted. And so that's a great point that we do, and that bleeds over into everything, every part of our life, is that we do have that instant gratification now in society. What else? When you think about running ahead of God, when you get it, your plan versus His plan. Okay, expand on that. Okay. So Larry said, better be ready for second place, and that God's plan is going to win. Okay, unanswered prayers. All right. We see here, your thought brings this to mind, Larry, taking second place. So we see in this whole study that the Israelites wanted a king, right? And what happened? They got a king. So we may not always realize that we're in second place for a while, because we might get what we asked for. They asked for a king, they demanded a king. So God said, okay, I'll give you a king. And as we studied last week, how that started off not too bad, right? Saul was humble about it. He actually hid from being anointed. It wasn't that he was going after the throne. But as time went on and things progressed, then the people realized that what Larry just said, that, wait a minute, we wanted something and this wasn't in our best interest. Did somebody have a hand over here? No? All right.
Samuel gave them a long list of things that was not going to be in their best interest.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
He said he's going to take your children, make servants out of them. He's going to take your pastors. King's going to do this, this, and this. And I guess there's about 8 or 10 different things there that Samuel says this is going to happen to you.
Right.
It didn't make him any difference. They want to be like the people around them.
That's right.
Oh,
Make us like everybody else in the world.
are we in that problem? Do we have that problem?
Our plan must encompass God's plan.
Okay? Expand on that. You keep giving these vague statements.
For us to be successful, for our plan to work, it must encompass, we must do it God's way.
Okay? So, we don't always know God's plan today like David did. So how do we do that?
Follow the word.
Okay? All right? Follow the word. How does that? Go ahead, Miss Pam.
You're hitting home because my dad, I had this discussion on what I did.
Okay?
I'll tell you what my prayer was to God. And he said, well, my prayer is to God's will. And he said, it may not be what we want right now, but it's going to be over, in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we want what we want,
Yeah.
and we want it now.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep. Okay?
But at the same time, we don't understand all the ways of God.
We don't understand all the ways of God. Okay?
So you might think it'll be better in the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
But it may not. You just never know.
Sure. So, this category really seems to speak to me, and there's a reason I'm asking some of these questions about, do we even know God's will? I feel like a walking example of this, and I think I've told some of these stories before. But of course, my family moved here from College Station, Texas in 1993. And all I did when I moved here, and for a long time in my life, I told everybody, I'm going back to Texas. As soon as I graduate, I'm out of here. And I've tried multiple times over my life to go back. And as most of you know, the rest of my family has gone on to other places, and 31 years later, I'm still here in Monticello. Now, I have, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've definitely seen some reasons that God kept me here. Very, very clear reasons that if I was not here and doing what I was doing at that time, situations would be completely different, and especially when Dad passed. And so, if you give it time, you'll see. It's not going to be in your time frame. Like I say, 30-something years later, here we are. And then my military career was like that. I joined to be a pilot. That is the reason that I went in, and I had it lined out. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I had a high school teacher who was a major at the time, and she was best friends with the full bird colonel, the state aviation officer. And this guy was who signed your flight packet and said, you're going to flight school. And so she set me up with a day with him in Little Rock while I was still in high school. And he laid the path out. You need to enlist. You need to be here. You need to be here. You need to be here. And I did it. And I didn't end up in the exact job that he listed because they were full, but it was still a job I could get to flight school from. And I went through it all, but I failed the vision exam, and it was bad enough I could not fly with corrective lenses. So I said, sure, I'll go have LASIK. That'll fix it. LASIK wasn't approved, and you can't undo LASIK. And so the career to flight school was done. It was not going to happen. It's through the military paying for it. So, but I ended up having probably a better military career, and I wound up flying a lot more as a crew member than if I'd have gotten my way. And so if I'd have gotten my way that the colonel laid out for me before I ever signed the papers, I would not have had the military career that I had. I wouldn't have achieved the rank that I achieved. I wouldn't have gone the places I went. And like I say, I would not have flown as much as I did. And so that's why I asked the question, Larry, is how do we know God's will? Can we know for that sort of, for the worldly stuff? So sometimes we want a specific career. I think Kelly's told a story about, wanting to move to Monticello, and it didn't exactly happen the way that he wanted it to. But in time, something gave. And so, and my prayer here lately has been along the lines of what Pam and Mike said of, God, here's what I want, and here's what I'm asking for. But I need you to protect me from myself and let your will happen. If this is your will, if what I want matches up with your will, you open the doors and you light the path. But if not, shut it down and don't let it happen. Miss Fran, you had your hand up.
Well, to me, to know if it's God's will, first of all, if you're seeking God's wisdom and praying about it and allowing Him to do what He wants to do in your life, then it's His will.
Okay.
And as long as you're following, I don't think, if you really pray about it, then you're not going to stray away from,
Sure.
God. So you're in that path.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
In your example, Chris, you could have chose rebellion because you wasn't getting what you wanted.
Okay.
But you didn't, you accepted what came down the pipe. So that's kind of accepting God's will.
Absolutely. Now you're giving good feedback. Good. I think so. Me and this thing don't get along. Excellent point. Because, whether our earthly careers and everything, I think you can, let me back up. You can't do anything and still be in God's will, but, there's a lot of careers that you can do, and when I enlisted in the military, the first thing Kelly Kuntz said to me was, God needs godly people in the military. And so there's a lot of different opinions within the church of whether to serve or not to serve, And so that was his opinion that, hey, you can be the godly example no matter what you're doing, no matter what your career is. And so, where God puts us, That's right. It's a good point. Do we rebel against, what path he puts us on and lays it out in front of us?
The Bible has a good list of personality traits that makes you successful, it makes you acceptable to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And if we study that Bible and apply those traits,
Yeah,
we're in God's hand.
absolutely. Absolutely. We're talking specifically here in this example about being king. One of the opening statements that the author of the book gives us is, what greater worldly honor could be afforded one than being king? I don't know that I agree with that statement. Because I think about being in that kind of a position and I don't want it. There's things, statements I've heard before that it's lonely at the top. The higher you are in the leadership realm, the lonelier it is, the more criticism you're going to come under. You have to listen to everybody else's problems. It's that right there just didn't appeal to me. But what his point is, a lot of people in this world are chasing the power. They're chasing the notoriety. They may be chasing that their name is remembered, forever in history. And so, what are we chasing? What is our, he talks about the allure of the throne. So, what do we allure after in this world, versus, the fame and the power, the money, the notoriety, the whole deal, that a lot of the kings went after. The kings were killing other kings to take over more kingdoms, more people, more real estate. Some of them, some of the allure is to do good and to do evil. So sometimes, we've seen people in power positions do good, right? We've seen a lot of people in power positions not do so good and use it for their gain or for somebody else's gain. So the question came as us today, should we shy away from high positions like this? If we were up for king, if we lived somewhere that was still a kingdom today, as a faithful Christian walking in the light, should we shy away from those kind of high level, high power positions, or should we step up and be the man of God to be in that position if nobody else will do it?
I think it goes back to what Kelly Coons' advice to you was.
Okay?
We need godly men in high places,
That's right. Okay?
godly leaders.
I think in that position, one of the blessings you can look at it from the standpoint is you've been blessed with an influence that not a lot of people have.
Okay?
And sometimes it may not be the position you want, but the good that can come from it may be part of the decision.
Sure.
As long as you keep your priorities straight.
Okay? So as long as we don't go like Saul, who seemed to have his straight in the beginning. That's right. As Josh said, if you didn't hear, you've been blessed with that influence, to be in that position and to be the godly man, like Marty mentioned. Kelly?
You look at the Israel kings, and you see great examples of great influence and terrible influence. And the kings actually represented the people, and was just like the people, and created havoc. But there were some kings that did right.
Mm-hmm.
You look real close at Solomon, and he started off with a bang in doing God's will. But he did the very things that in Deuteronomy says, don't do. Kings don't do these things. And he did every one of them that don't do. So he went down the tube. But he started good. And there's several other examples of Israel. I think individual has to seek God wherever he is.
Absolutely.
And to try in the best of his ability to uphold the virtue of Jesus Christ. Wherever. It's what he says, what he does, his actions that he makes. And that's not an easy thing to do.
Right. Right.
But that's the deal.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And sometimes when you're in those positions, you have to be very, very strong in your faith so that you're not wavered and that you are not influenced. I mean,
Well, you can't hide in those positions. You know, sometimes it's when you're not running the show, it's easier, maybe not easier, but everybody doesn't see the decisions you make daily. You know, the people right there around you do, but boy, when you're at the top of the pyramid, everything you do is examined and visible and scrutinized. And so I think that's, at least in my mind, that's one thing that, you know, probably causes me to, man, I don't need that pressure and microscope and but when you really think about it, as we talked through it this morning, one, if it's the will of God, you know, you probably can't stop it. And two, you know, we should have the faith that he's going to guide us through that and he's going to protect us in that situation. You know, as Kelly said, as long as we seek him and stay close to him in that kind of a position, you know, and regardless of the position we're in. But today we're just specifically talking about a king type, a top of the food chain, top of the pyramid leadership type role that a lot of people do shy away from. And so it comes under a lot of pressure and a lot of scrutiny.
It helps if you surround yourself with godly people also.
It does. I think I mentioned last week, you know, some of the best leaders like to say they surround themselves with people smarter than them. And so, yeah, if you, absolutely, you know, if you brought in godly people to be your inner circle in this, that would definitely make a big difference. And again, that applies to what we do today, regardless who we surround ourselves with, regardless of what position we're in today. Sean?
We asked the question about what happens in our life is God's will. To me, I think it's just as simple as what God's asking of us. It's his will is to seek God, be faithful. And when we do that, I think it allows us to be patient enough to see what God's doing in our life. I know I've ran ahead of God, ran away from God. I've come to the realization that whenever I seek God, his will is done. And there's really no other question to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very good.
I think there's a couple of things that can lead you there too. And one of the things that sets David apart most, and we've kind of alluded to this, is his ability to examine himself, and also take criticism from those examining him. I mean, you see that throughout the Psalms, him crying out, saying, I'm not worthy, and you brought me out of the pit. And you're the one that's put me in this position, but when he's told, you know, you're the man, you're the one that sinned, he is able to take that and go forth with it in the right way. And I think when you are put in a position like that, you better examine yourself before everybody else has the opportunity to.
Absolutely.
So that you are making right choices.
Yeah.
I mean, really, you kind of have to beat them to the punch, and that has to be a practice that you put into place, is examining yourself and asking, is this right? Is it God's will? You know, not is it right in my mind? Is it right in God's
Right.
will? And like Sean said, it really is as simple as looking at what he's asked you to do.
That's
and
right.
doing that. You know, and am I trusting that if I follow that it's gonna be okay?
Yeah.
You know, it might not be easy, but it will be okay because it's his plan.
Absolutely. And sometimes those choices, though, you made a good point. The decisions you're making are they in line with God's will? Well, they're not always going to be in line with the world, you know. And I guess I'm thinking from a presidential standpoint or an elected official that's making governance decisions. You know, they're faced with that back and forth of what the world wants right now, which we see is nowhere close to in line with God's word, and what decisions are they making?
When I was listening to Carly, what she was talking about it, I thought about, wonder where David was, the age he was when he wrote Psalm 139. This is a full recognition of where God is.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it and see, well, if I go to the depths of the earth, he's there. If I go down to the sea, if I'm the sea, he's there. He's behind me, he's in front of me, he's beside me. I mean, he understood when he wrote that psalm, God. And he looks at it from a point that you can't get away from him.
That's right.
He's here.
That's right.
And it's up to you to make those decisions that will draw you closer to him. Psalm 139, I get excited every time I think about it, because it is a recognition of God in his place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very good. Marty, you had something?
Yeah, I was just thinking, as you were talking there, you do take a lot of scrutiny if you're at the top.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's, people, you're gonna be under that spotlight. But also, on the other side of that, you're gonna be the one that they're kind of influenced to do the things that they want to get their agenda pushed across.
Yeah.
So you gotta be really careful. If you're not a man of God, even if you start out as a good man, and you don't follow God's plan that he set out for you in your life,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna fall pretty easy.
Absolutely.
So you've got, I see a lot of people that are elected in the high political positions that are good people, and you may even vote for them. When they get in there, if they're not a man of God, they fall easily.
Yeah, can erode pretty quickly. Absolutely.
It can ruin a good man.
Yeah.
Just thinking, I know we're talking about high authority kings or whatever, but what's much different between them and us today?
Mm-hmm.
Just ordinary Christians. Should we still live like we're being watched constantly, which we are?
Yeah.
But then going back to like what Kelly and Carly was saying, it's all about what's in our heart, how we focus and how we live our lives, and what's important to us. Always use the same priority. What's our priorities? And it's the same way from a king or a leader all the way down to the lowest servant.
Mm-hmm.
You do what you do by what's in your heart and what God says for us.
Absolutely. And when you really focus on
I think we need to remember that our God is an all-knowing God, and he has our best interests in his heart,
Mm-hmm.
and we have got to trust him with that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. He said all this was going to happen. In Genesis, he knew that they were going to ask for a king, and he said it again. Let me see my notes here. It was twice, though, he predicted that this was going to happen when they went into the promised land, that they were going to want. And so he knew, you're exactly right, he's all-knowing. So he knew this was going to happen. He was still angered by it, even when it did happen, even though he knew it was going to happen early on. And you're exactly right. If we really just put ourselves aside, and regardless of where we are in the social world and career world, if our focus is daily walk with him, no matter who we come in contact with, to me it just gets down to that simple, that he's going to take care of us and he's going to provide for us. I don't know that means get rid of any ambition, as far as what you do professionally. The scripture tells us we've got to work. We have to work to eat, right? So how ambitious should we be?
Do the best we can be.
Do the best we can be. Get up every day and do the best job we can do. Okay?
I mean, if you do it honestly,
Okay.
that's probably
Okay.
do it with upstanding character.
Absolutely.
Without limits.
That goes back to the kings who killed to take over a throne and territories. You know, are we achieving any advancement honestly and humbly, or are we stepping on other people to climb that ladder? Okay? So David was anointed when he was 15, and he didn't start his reign until 30. So we've got 15 years that he knew he was going to be king. Now, he didn't know it was going to be in 15 years. You know, he wasn't anointed at 15 and said, all right, when you're 30, you're going to take over. He just knew at some point that he was going to be king. What did he do in those 15 years? Say again? I still didn't understand you.
He got Goliath.
Okay, all right. He killed Goliath. What else?
Played the harp,
He played the harp.
got spears thrown at it.
Okay. All right. What else?
He tried to keep the peace
Tried to keep the peace.
somewhat.
Developed leadership characteristics.
Okay, developed leadership characteristics.
All that time he was running,
Okay.
got in shape.
Yeah.
But he kept his belief in God.
Kept his belief in God. How do you sum all that up? Daily living. Okay. Kelly said daily living. I'm looking for something else. I do have something specific in mind this time.
Relationship with God.
Relationship with God. All of that's fallen under one small little statement. Waiting. He prepared himself. When you culminate all that together, he was preparing himself. All of that came together and culminated into what he needed to be king. David patiently prepared himself instead of selfishly asserting himself. David's life was one of preparation for greater future service, even before ever knowing of God's plan for him. Started off as a shepherd. He learned to care for those in his keeping. He experienced the hardships and deprivations of long hours, days away from home, dangerous situations, treacherous terrain, severities of weather, and the threat from enemies of the sheep. When the young shepherd boy David heard that giant Goliath defied the armies of the living God, he said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with the Philistine." Saul did not believe David was able to fight the great Philistine warrior, but David knew he was ready for the challenge, for the events of his past, and prepared him for this day. So whether he really realized that each day that he was out in the wilderness with the sheep was preparing him, we don't know. Was he, cognitive of that? But it is kind of a humbling thought to me that, maybe I just need to stop, slow down, and every day is preparing me for something. I don't know what it's preparing me for, but it's preparing me for something. And it may be great in the eyes of the world, and it may not be. And that really doesn't matter. As long as it's great in God's eyes, and that I am in line with Him and His will when this is over. So, anything else? We are about out of time this morning. Any other thoughts of being in line with God's plan, God's will, timing? Seems like we've hit on that quite a bit.
I think especially early on, there is, in my mind, you look at what he was doing, and man, some of that seems so insignificant. It really does, as far as like what he was going through, and just taking care of some stinking sheep, and that's preparing him to be a king. God's idea of what He sees when He looks at you can be very different than when you look at yourself.
Because being a shepherd was pretty lowly, right? It wasn't highly thought of. And that thought has continued on into, American history. And so, John Wayne movie, they weren't too high on a sheep farmer back then. So, and even today, there's still not a lot of people who are around, in the livestock industry. People who keep sheep are still kind of thought of as, oh, why are we messing with sheep? And so, but you're right. We take the lowliest position that you can probably think of, and it's preparing him to be king. And it's exactly right. What God sees in you and what God is preparing you for, one, is probably outside our control. And as long as we're in that right mindset of just...
His brothers worked on it too.
Okay, they did. That's right.
Almost did.
Yeah.
I tried to.
Yep. Well, and they didn't think a whole lot of him. When he came out to the battlefield, oh, you're just out here to gawk and see what's going on. Yeah, absolutely. Very good.
The occupation of shepherd may be a humble occupation, but it carried a lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
They were responsible for finding them pasture land and water and protecting them from predators. So it carried a lot of responsibility and prepared David in that way.
It did, absolutely.
And,
Absolutely. You're exactly right in the preparation at that and how important that job was. Because as low as they might have looked at the shepherd, those sheep were pretty important to the economy and to the family and everything else that they did. The sheep were very important, but just the person who was in charge of staying out there with them wasn't all that. By the world was not.
Reverse that and see how important the shepherd is to the sheep.
Okay, absolutely. How important the shepherd is to the sheep. Very good. Boy, that's a whole nother day worth of some topic right there.
Have you seen Dr. Nelson's post as she deals with the sheep on campus? She frequently says, I know why we were frequently compared to sheep.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the brightest animals.
That's right. That's right. Not the bride. Need a lot of leadership, protection, and absolutely. Kelly?
One of the things that's plagued me over the years is that, what does God want me to do?
Mm-hmm.
And David talked about it in Psalms 57, 3. I cry out to the God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. We have to look at ourselves at 1 Corinthians 13:2. Examine yourselves daily, see whether you're in your faith or not.
Yeah.
And we need to look at ourselves. What does God really want me to do? What am I doing for him now? What do I need to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
What is his purpose for me?
And I think the world has gotten to the more focused on the career path and the earning versus what are we doing for God. The focus is not so much on what am I doing for God. It's, what's my worldly purpose. That's really second nature. That really doesn't matter if we're not working for God and doing his will as far as, reaching and saving the lost and everything like that we're supposed to be doing. The big push right now, there's a whole lot of prosperity speakers out there who will reference Scripture. They're not preachers, but they are motivational people, but they'll reference that God wants you to be successful, but it's really not focused on God's will, like Kelly just said, of what are we doing for Him, what work are we doing for Him and His kingdom. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank y'all. We're out of time. Next week we will be talking about, I'm not going to know how to say this, Shimei, Shimei, an enemy with whom David showed great self-control.
You're locked over.
Yep. So that's where we will be next week. Thank y'all.